Welcome back to our next round of presentation. It will be done by Mr. Ollie Cavan, Senior Director Sales, Epic Tenable. The presentation will be on hackers versus finance, strategy CISO can take to the bank. Mr. Ollie has had 20 years experience driving cutting-edge technology business in both Europe and Asia. This includes bringing innovative cybersecurity startups to market in the API region, such as Prolexic, Fishline, that was subsequently acquired by Akamai and Barracuda. With a spell on the corporate dark side building the Akamai security business unit in API, Oli is happy to move away from the commodity play and return another cutting edge IT security trailblaze like Tenable. Over to you, sir, for your presentation.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the attention of the audience. I will start my presentation, and I hope you enjoy it. So, today we'll be talking about Active Directory security. Active Directory, as you may know, is a Microsoft product. It is run by probably 90% of all enterprises globally, and it's involved in authentication. It holds passwords and controls access within most organizations' network. And for this reason, it has become a major target for attackers. And you can see AD being involved in controlling access, or at least being connected to all sorts of systems within an organization. As such, it's a great target for hackers because if they can control the AD, they can normally get access to almost all systems within a company network. Today, we all see regularly news stories about hacking attacks. I'm sure you're very familiar with the very high profile and common ransomware stories that are occurring almost every week around the world. And you will find that in many of these cases, if you dig beneath the surface, Active Directory is involved because it is run by most organizations. It is connecting within these organizations to most systems that the organization is running in their network. The AD has become a prime target for attackers. It's an easy way to get access for the target that the attackers are going after. And I'm sure we're very familiar with terms like insider threat, ransomware, social engineering attacks. Insider threat, I'm sure we all know, is when you have a rogue employee that for whatever reason decides to do damage to the organization by doing a cyber attack. AD is one way they can do that. If the attacker has the ability to make changes in the Active Directory, for example, create backdoors in the AD through creating misconfigurations, that will allow them to have access to sensitive data from the organization, or at least leave the organization exposed to attackers, for example, escalating privilege inside that AD or running ransomware through the AD to infect the organization. Ransomware, I'm sure you're very familiar with terms like Maze ransomware, Ryuk ransomware, Revil ransomware, Snake ransomware. It's very, very common now for ransomware to be designed to specifically use misconfigurations in Active Directory to spread throughout the organization. And we will talk about this in more depth. And then social engineering attacks. I'm sure we're all familiar with the very common approaches, phishing, whether it be done through email or through social networking platforms. Quite often the attackers, as part of the attack, once they get in, they may want to establish persistency. They may want to be able to spread quickly through the organization. And AD is commonly targeted also in social engineering attacks in the later stages to allow the attacker to spread and create backdoors that allow for them to remain in the target company's network. That is persistency in the target company's network. Ransomware, as we've mentioned already, is a very high-profile problem. Year on year, we're seeing significant growth in the amount of money that is being paid out by organizations in terms of paying off ransomware attackers. And ransomware is a very easy attack for attackers to run, in that they can pre-program their ransomware malware to specifically infect an organization. Quite often, once the ransomware gets in, it will scan the AD and try and find weaknesses, misconfigurations that it can use to spread throughout the organization. For example, misconfigurations in GPOs, group policy objects, which are a part of Active Directory. If there are misconfigurations like passwords in clear text, or perhaps there are misconfigurations that allow code to be executed through the GPOs, these are very common attack pathways in AD that are being used by ransomware. And we're seeing that for our organizations that we work with, ransomware readiness is becoming a very important issue. Ransomware readiness is even going up to the board level, because there are so many organizations now hit by ransomware, as they seem to be maybe the most common type of attack hitting organizations in financial services. And they don't just go after the large organizations. We're seeing also the attackers are going after the small organizations. For this reason, ransomware readiness is becoming a huge topic for our organization that we work with. And quite often, the ransomware is using AD. And how are they doing it? They're finding misconfigurations that allow the ransomware to spread quickly through the AD. We talked about misconfigurations in GPO. There are other misconfigurations around delegation, for example. There are misconfigurations that allow for what is called a Kerberoasting attack. So if you have an SPN on a privileged account, all these are misconfigurations in the AD. And our clients are now saying, I need to understand on my AD, how vulnerable am I to a ransomware using my AD to spread? And I want to fix that vulnerability as quickly as possible. And then I want to put in place a program. So I am regularly monitoring my AD to work out if new attack pathways appear on my AD that could be used by ransomware. Then I want to track how long it takes me to remove those attack pathways. So having that ransomware readiness program to harden the AD against ransomware, and then continually monitor and remediate new attack pathways that appear on the AD, and have reporting data that can be shown to management to say, hey, we understand the problem, we fixed the problem, and we're now monitoring to make sure we maintain a level of acceptable risk on our AD to ransomware. So if you look at how an attack occurs, how the attacks occur, as I'm sure you know, there are multiple steps that the attackers would go through. And this is a high-level overview. But what the attacker is doing on AD also maps to the overall attack strategy. So when an attacker gets in, they want to, first of all, when they're looking at the AD, explore what weaknesses are on the AD, what are there that could be used by the attacker to either escalate privilege or to run ransomware. Once they identify the existing misconfiguration attack pathways, they want to start escalating their privilege. While they're doing this, they want to kind of hide their steps. They want to evade any forensic detection. So they want to try and do attacks that are very difficult to track using typical monitoring approaches to AED. Attackers quite often will want to create persistence in the AD. They want to create backdoors so that they can have a way to get back into the AD at a later date. And quite often at the end of the attack cycle, they may wish to exfiltrate data. And we at Tenable feel that it's important to take the same approach the attackers are using in terms of how we secure AD. So as I talked about before, AD is being attacked by attackers using misconfigurations to either escalate privilege or run ransomware. So AD is a Microsoft product. It's been around for about 20 years. It's very complex. There are many different types of configuration options that you can make on the AD. And the attackers, they have made their research and they have found some of these misconfigurations can be used to either escalate privilege or run ransomware. Now, AD is actually a database. And we believe at Tenable that the best way to secure AD is to look at that database, because there's no way attackers can hide themselves in the database. So if you look at how traditional organizations secure their Active Directory, it's very common for our clients, when they are talking to us initially, they will say, hey, I'm doing an AD audit on my configs once a year, twice a year, maybe even every month. The problem with doing only AD audits to secure AD is an organic piece of software. It is always changing. As I mentioned before, AD is sitting on a database. Every time you log in, there's a change in the database when you authenticate. Every time you add a new user, there's a change in the database of AD. Every time you remove a user, every time you install software, every time you remove software, and so on and so forth. All of these changes are happening in the AD database. And some of those changes may create configurations that are dangerous, that allow attackers to either escalate privilege or run ransomware. So if you're doing an audit, like a snapshot audit, once a year, once a month, unfortunately, you're not going to see in real time when these new dangerous attack pathways appear. And if you look at a large organization, you may have 50 to 100 changes in your AD database, even more, maybe 200 every minute. And if you're doing only an audit once a month, you are not going to see any of those changes until the next audit. Whereas if you're able to look in real time at the changes in the AD database as they appear, you can detect and potentially remove them before an attacker can use them. And today's ransomware and other attack techniques, they are smart and they are patient. Quite often, the attackers will get in, they will move around the endpoints, and they will monitor the AD, and they will wait for the right combination of misconfigurations to appear on the AD, and only then will they execute their attack. And now, if you are only doing an audit once a month or once every 6 months, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to see when that right combination appears, and it may be too late before you run your next audit and realize, hey, there's an attack pathway here that the attackers used. Another approach that our clients use is using event logs. So I'm sure the audience knows that most Microsoft products create event logs, so you can track the activity in that product, and AD is no different. So a common approach is to turn on the advanced event logs on AD, which are called the verbose event logs, and feed them all into a SIEM. So it could be Splunk or ArcSight or whatever SIEM. The problem with this is if you turn on those verbose event logs, you are going to send every single change happening in the AD to your SIEM. That's a fire hose of event logs, a lot of event logs, and only a very small percentage will be potentially dangerous. Then you need to have an AD security expert that knows every single dangerous attack pathway event log, and also attack detection event log, and there are hundreds of them. And AD security experts are hard to find and they're expensive. And if you take this approach, we find most organizations don't have that AD security expertise in-house. So they need to find a third party, be it a big consultancy firm or whatever, that are very expensive. And then they need to be able to create the SIEM rules for every single dangerous misconfiguration on AD and an attack pathway and attack detection, and create the SIEM rules to detect. And there are hundreds of them. And this can take a huge amount of investment. And our clients have calculated that it can be sometimes in the region of $5 to $10 million US in consultancy fees just to set this up using event logs into a SIEM to cover all known attack pathways and attack approaches. The problem with this, apart from being expensive, is the attackers know that most organizations are using event logs. So the attackers are now doing attacks on AD that either don't create event logs or don't create enough event logs to be detected effectively. So one example is what's called DC Shadow. DC Shadow is an attack on AD where the attacker is creating a rogue domain controller and is syncing at the API level to copy the AD database or make changes in the AD database. This attack does not create enough event logs to be detected effectively using event logs. So our clients do not feel comfortable that if they're using event logs only, they are seeing everything happening in the AD database, because there are attacks now, unfortunately, that attackers are doing that don't create enough event logs to be detected, or attackers, when they get into your AD, they can switch off event logs. Then they can do changes in your AD and there will be no event log created, so you won't know what they did. So our clients are saying, hey, perhaps there is a different way. Sometimes they are looking at EDR vendors, for example, or they're looking at UEBA vendors. So organizations that are doing a user entity behavior analysis to detect attacks on AD. So one example is Microsoft Identity Defender. So a UEBA, as I'm sure you know, is detecting attacks when they occur by detecting the behavior. That's why it's called UEBA, User Entity Behavior Analysis. The problem with trying to secure AD by using a UEBA alone, attackers 9 times out of 10 will be using a misconfiguration to run the attack on the AD. The only way to stop it is to remove that misconfiguration. Now, it takes time to remove a misconfiguration. So if you're only using UEBA to detect an attack, you will only see the new misconfiguration when the attacker is using it. And our clients believe that they will have not enough time to respond and remediate that misconfiguration before the attack occurs. So a lot of our clients believe that a UEBA is really just a compromise notification service. It's not going to help them stop the compromise of their AD. It's just going to tell them how they were compromised. So clearly, there needs to be a different approach. And our approach at Tenable, and Tenable's philosophy in general, is it's better to proactively secure your systems to avoid the attackers being able to compromise them than to actually wait until an attack happens and then respond. And our approach is the same for securing AD. So we are using an approach that looks at the AD database. We do this by using a software approach where we are creating a graph copy of the client's AD database. Now that can sit on-prem, it does not connect to the internet, and it's looking at the AD database in real time. It does not use event logs. So as I'm sure you know, within AD, you have domain controllers and they stay synchronized through replication. It's actually possible to subscribe to that replication API. It's a normal API of Microsoft, and you can subscribe to that with a normal user account. So all that Tenable AD requires is one normal user account per forest, and then we can subscribe to the replication API on each domain in that forest that a client wants us to secure. Now, by subscribing to that replication API, because we have a normal user account, we have no admin rights, and we don't install agents on the AD, we simply subscribe to the replication API, read-only access. We cannot make changes to the AD. But the PDCE, the primary domain controller that we subscribe to in each domain, thinks that the Tenable AD software is just another domain controller, a secondary domain controller. So they will actually sync with us. We will create a graph copy of the client's AD database, and then every change happening in the PDCE will be replicated into our graph copy. So we, first of all, have a full map of the client's AD database, including all of the misconfigurations that could be used by attackers to run ransomware or escalate privilege. And then because we look at every change happening in the AD database, we also see new misconfigurations when they appear. So working with Tenable AD, the installation is very fast because we don't need any agents, we don't need admin rights. It literally takes 4 hours to install our software. We only need a few virtual machines on-prem and one normal user account. And within 4 to say 6 hours, we'll map out the entire AD infrastructure for the client and show all the misconfigurations that can be used by attackers. Now, our platform not only tells you which misconfigurations are there, but also tells you how to fix them. So we have remediation advice, and our team will help you understand which are the misconfigurations that are easy to fix, so you can fix them quickly. We call them the quick wins. Which are the ones that are more complex that maybe you need to work with other teams to fix. But effectively, you want to harden your AD down as much as possible, remove as many of those misconfigurations as possible. We'll also set up alerting. So our platform can feed into ticketing systems, Jira, Remedy, also systems like ServiceNow, etc. So when new misconfigurations appear in your AD, they can be sent to whoever manages your AD, so they can be alerted, and they will have access to a system that tells them, this is the misconfiguration, this is how to fix it. So then you can do continuous hardening. You can remove new attack pathways when they appear. We also can send syslog alerts. So we detect attacks in the Tenable AD platform. So things like golden ticket, DC shadow, password spraying, credential dumping. So quite often clients will feed these to their SOC. So it doesn't matter if the SOC is internal or external, our alerts go out via syslog. So we can feed into any SIEM that accepts syslog. And then we can raise alerts in real time as attacks are occurring on the AD. And then finally, we're capturing every change happening in the AD database in real time. So we don't rely on event logs, and we're capturing the changes the attackers make. So for example, if they put a backdoor to create persistence in your AD, we will capture that in the AD database because the attackers cannot hide their activity in the AD database. So we can be used for doing threat hunting and forensics. You can work out what the attacker did during the attack, and you can see, for example, do they try to create persistence or do they create new attack pathways? And you can also do threat hunting, because once we've connected into the AD, we're storing every change that has occurred in the AD, and that can be used to go back as reference material. So you can threat hunt back in time from the time we connected to your AD and find out, hey, have there been new attacks or are there existing backdoors in my AD that have been created since that point of connection? So we're doing all of this with no agents and no admin rights. And we provide real-time value because it only takes 4 to 6 hours to install our software, and then you will see the full mapping of the AD. So for our client CISOs and CIOs, they see this as very valuable because, first of all, they're not adding any additional risk to their AD. So there's no agents, there's no admin rights. It's using a normal function of AD, which is the replication API, and it delivers value instantly. The core functions are the initial identification of the misconfigurations on the AD, and then advice on how to remediate. Then ongoing continuous hardening to detect and then provide remediation advice to remove new misconfigurations when they appear. There's the attack detection, so detect when attackers are actually attacking the AD. And then finally, there's the incident response, so the forensic ability to look at what attackers did in the AD during an attack, and also threat hunting to look back in time. And all of this is done in the same platform with no agents, no admin rights. So it's a low risk and a light touch approach. And we believe that we are in a unique position to provide AD security simply because where Tenable AD came from was from some researchers that were behind, for example, the research that led to an open source tool for securing AD called Bloodhound. So our research team that is responsible for keeping our tool up to date to understand the latest attack pathways on AD that attackers are using and provide updates to our platform, which is free of charge to make sure that our clients can. That research team have got many, many years experience in securing AD. We focus only on securing AD within the Tenable AD business, and we don't provide any other solution. We're focused only on securing the AD, and we deliver our service with a strong customer success management approach. So we have customer success managers whose role is to work very closely with our clients through the onboarding process. So once the platform is connected, there are hundreds of dangerous misconfigurations that our platform detects. So we can help the client understand what is on their AD, understand how to fix that. We can help them understand the best practices for how to deal with new misconfigurations when they appear on the AD, how to deal with attacks when they appear on the AD, and also how to do forensics and threat hunting. Most of our clients are large organizations that have a SIEM, and they are creating correlation rules for our alerts with other technologies that they are running. So we can provide examples and use cases of different SIEM correlation approaches our clients are running. And on top of that, some clients are even using SOAR to do automatic response to certain alerts. So, for example, it is possible to use a SOAR to automatically remediate certain dangerous misconfigurations that we detect in the client's AD. It's possible to use a SOAR to automatically do things when certain attacks are detected on the AD. And all of this information is shared with the client as part of the customer success management journey. And it's on an ongoing basis because AD security, the problem doesn't stop evolving. Typically, every year, there are around 10 to 20 new dangerous attack techniques on AD that are announced. So attackers are developing their own new attack techniques through doing their own research. You've got white hat hackers presenting at places like Black Hat and other security conferences that are doing their own research and announcing new ways to compromise AD through misconfigurations. And then you've got Microsoft every year normally announcing several dangerous misconfigurations. So normally it's around 10 to 20 per year. And as part of the Tenable AD subscription service, we provide updates that will include the new attack techniques, which are free of charge. And this is all, and every time that occurs, typically is once a quarter, our CSM will talk through the new attack techniques with the client. We'll provide some examples of maybe SIEM correlation rules if there are some to share, or SOAR playbook rules. So that's the end of the presentation. We hope it was interesting to you. And now I'll hand it over to the hosts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ole. That was very insightful presentation. Thank you for your knowledge. I would like to thank you for your valuable time by giving a token of participation certificate. Thank you for your valuable time, sir.
Thank you very much. Should I log off now?
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to the audience as well. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh, that was Mr. Ole. Kevin, the presentation was went well. So now we are moving ahead with the next panel discussion, which is enhancing customer journey with digital transformation. Stay tuned. We'll be right back in 1 minute. Thank you.